Hello and welcome to today's video. Today's video is one I wanted to make for quite a while. I make a lot of, top 3 lists and things like that about different kinds of topics. And one that I've spoken about a few times is my favorite inks. Now, my favorite inks are going to be different to your favorite inks, and yours are going to be different to everyone else's. And so what I wanted to do was try and collate a bit of information and actually discuss what more sort of like across the board favorite inks were in this hobby. So what I did was I put a call out on a few of my networks, so Reddit, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, for people to submit a list of their 3 favorite inks. And what I have done is I've collated a list of all of those inks and how many times they were voted for, and have created a list of what are sort of from those people the top 10 favorite inks. Now, 165 people responded across the different networks, which I think is amazing. And we had 299 different inks mentioned. So obviously, apart from there being a lot of double ups, and a lot of inks sort of got, 3, 4, or 5 votes, there were a lot that got 1. And it was really interesting to see the sheer variety of those inks that were listed by people. Now, I listed my 3 as Diamine Oxford Blue, Robert Oster Tranquility, and Diamine Monaco Red. Now, 2 of those, Oxford Blue and Tranquility, were also voted for by other people. I was the only person who mentioned Monaco Red, and I also put out a call to a bunch of pen celebrities, if you will, to get their favorite inks, which I will discuss in this video a little bit as well. Now, there were a few interesting statistics that came out. Firstly, there were a handful of inks that I was really surprised didn't get mentioned. That if it had been a top 5 or 6, I probably would have mentioned a couple of these myself. One is Diamine Syrah, which I think is a beautiful ink, didn't get mentioned. Neither did Diamine 1864 Blue Black, which is my favorite blue black ink. Another one was Rohrer und Klingner's Smaragdgrün, their emerald green, which I was really surprised didn't make the list. It's a beautiful, vibrant emerald green. And also there were no Noodler's black inks on the list. Well, at least none of the standard ones. There seemed to be this little wave of popularity for Noodler's black inks a few years ago. Things like X-Feather, Heart of Darkness, Borealis Black, and of course, straight up Noodler's black. And none of those were listed, which I found to be rather interesting. Now, I have my notebook here because I've taken some notes for a few other fun stats that I thought was quite cool. So, Pilot Iroshizuku had 21 inks voted for. That's quite a lot, and 4 of those are in the top 10. Diamine had 47 different inks mentioned out of 299 inks, and 3 of those were in the top 10. So those are some pretty popular inks, and in fact, the number 1 and 2 inks were voted for by 18% of people. So 18 out of 100 had one of these inks or both in their top 3 list. So I'll be going over the top 10 in just a little bit. Now, I mentioned the fact that there were pen celebrity votes, and so I contacted a bunch of my favorite pen friends, and I'm just going to read some interesting submissions. Emmy from Pen Venture suggested Neptune Blue, which is one of his collaborative inks with Diamine, which is a beautiful ink. SBRE Brown, of course, said SBRE Brown ink. Michael Liu from Platypus Pens put up some really beautiful Van Diemen's inks in his top 3, which were Hailstorm and Devil's Kitchen. Mark Your Pages, the really great sort of bullet journaler on YouTube, mentioned Birmingham Inks Electric Patina, which is absolutely stunning ink, and of course Wearingeul TikTok Croc, another really interesting one. Fellow Australian-based reviewer Gary Eves mentioned Tobacco Sunburst and Pure Pen's St. George's Cross, which was one of the more unique inks to get mentioned. David from Big Boot on Pens mentioned a couple that made it into the top 10, and also Diamine's Communication Breakdown, which we all know is a favourite of his and is an awesome ink. Vanessa Langton mentioned a couple of things like Cacao de Brazil by Heban, but also KWZ Fontoplumo exclusive Oscar, which I've looked at now, and I'm going to have to order some of that because that is the most beautiful brown. KWZ do some amazing browns. And then Samuel Naldi gave me some great suggestions, and my favourite of his was Graf von Faber-Castell Garnet Red, which is one of my favourite red inks, and I really do enjoy the Graf von Faber-Castell inks a lot. So that is just some of the celebrity votes, and I included all their votes in the standard tallies as well. So we're about to start the top 10, and I'll start at 10, but I wanted to give one honourable mention, and that is to the highest ranked Robert Oster ink in this list, which came in at number 12 on the list, and that is Fire and Ice. This is a beautiful ink, and Robert Oster is one of my favourite ink brands, and he had a lot of inks mentioned, and at number 12, his highest ranking ink was, as I say, Fire and Ice. But now let's start with the top 10. Number 10 was my number 1, and that is this, Diamine Oxford Blue. Beautiful deep dark blue ink, great hit of sheen, just a really lovely all-round ink for those who want something with a little bit of personality for their everyday writing. And then another Diamine at number 9, and this time it is Oxblood. Oxblood is a beautiful, rich, dark red, almost leaning into the brown sort of territory. It's a great ink. Once again, one of those inks that has a bit of personality away from the standard reds and dark reds that are on the market. And at number 8, we get the first of our Iroshizuku inks, and it is Murasaki Shikibu, which is one of those beautiful, vibrant blue, violet, purple inks. Not a super purple ink. I find it to be, more violet with a hint of blue running through it, but a beautiful ink. And these Iroshizuku inks are very, very clearly very popular. At number 7, we get Aurora Black. So this was one of the 2 blacks that made it into the top 10. Black is probably the standard ink, obviously, and Aurora Black has long been held up as a very, very popular ink. One of my favorite blacks. I've used a lot of it over the years, and it's not a particularly cheap ink, and it's not that easy to get a hold of, particularly here in Australia, but it is a beautiful ink and a lovely wet black. And if you've got a pen that you don't know how it's performing, this is a great ink to put in it just to see if it's the pen or an ink issue. Okay, now is one that surprised me. This made it in at number 6, and it is Taccia Sabimidori. This is a dark teal ink with some lovely sort of rich dark shading and sheen and stuff. It's a beautiful ink, but I personally would not have picked this to be this high on the list. I would have suggested it maybe in the top 20, and also David from Fig Boot on Pens put this in his top 3. It's a beautiful ink, it really is. So, number 6, Taccia Sabimidori. Okay, at number 5, we get Aurora Borealis from Diamine. This was one of those inks that was voted for by Reddit. They've had a bit of a mixed review of these over the years, with different ones being more popular than others. But Aurora Borealis, really very popular. Beautiful sort of tealy green color, beautiful on the page, performs really, really well. So absolutely no surprise that this came in so highly on this list. And now it's time for another Iroshizuku, this time Tsuki-Yo. This ink was voted for by a lot of people, and of our celebrity list, Michael Liu also had this on his list. It is a beautiful, beautiful ink. Sort of leans in that tealy blue, black, dark blue kind of range. Not quite a true blue black in my opinion, but certainly darker than a lot of blue blacks on the market, but it is a great ink. Pilot Iroshizuku inks perform really, really well. They're widely available. They're pretty affordable in the scheme of things. They have a great bottle, which you'll see on the next one. And yeah, they're just lovely performing inks. So Pilot Iroshizuku, Tsuki-Yo here at number 4. Okay, number 3 on the list today is probably why Noodlers didn't make a huge splash in terms of their blacks, and it is this ink. This is Platinum Carbon Black. This is a rich, dark black, great water resistance, all that kind of stuff. It's pretty easily available these days, and the price is not too bad, but it performs absolutely incredibly. It is a pigmented ink, but it's safe for fountain pens. It's just wonderful, and as I said, super waterproof and a great black color. So at number 3, a waterproof black, platinum carbon black. Okay, the final 2 today, and these were probably no surprise to anyone. I certainly wasn't surprised when these garnered so many votes. And of course, they are both Iroshizuku inks. And if you're playing along at home, you probably have an idea what these two are as well. But at number 2, we have this, Kon-Peki from Pilot Iroshizuku. Now, this ink was made, is sort of thrust into the spotlight a little bit by Brian Goulet over the years, who like swore by it, and it sort of just shot to massive popularity, and there's a good reason. It's a beautiful blue. In fact, Emmy from Pen Adventure, SBRE Brown, and once again David from Fig Boudon Pens put this in their top 3. It is a beautiful ink. It performs incredibly well, and in terms of blues, it's not the traditional sort of royal blue that you would use necessarily in an office, but if you can get away with something with a little bit more personality, a little bit of pop on the page, this is really a wonderful ink. Nice little hits of sheen on the right pen and paper combination. Pilot Iroshizuku Kon-Peki, no surprises there whatsoever. And then we get to number 1, and this will be probably no surprise, especially if you've been doing a little bit of sort of card counting as we've gone. Number 1 on this list, Yama-Budo from Pilot Iroshizuku. This got more votes than any other. Obviously, it's number 1. But this, as I said, was super high on the list. And between Kon-Peki and Yama-Budo, 18% of people had these inks, at least one of them, in their top 3 list, which like is so much more than any other ink on the list. This would have been in my top 5 or 6. I think it's a beautiful ink. The performance of this is great. It's a pretty unique color. It's got a great shading, great sheen, all those kinds of things. Because it is unique, it's not like you can go and grab any other sort of magenta ink on the market and just replace it. It is unique and it's beautiful. And, you know, as I said, great bottles, great availability, pretty affordable, all of that kind of stuff. And a trustworthy brand. Pilot Iroshizuku, or Pilot even more to the point, have such a long, strong history in making inks and pens, and the Iroshizuku line is obviously no exception, with 21 of them being in the list of voted for inks. But Yama-Budo coming in at number 1 on this list, as voted by you guys. So that was the top 3, well, top 10, voted as by your top 3 inks. So these are my favorite inks. As I said, a couple of mine made the list, and I enjoy so many of those inks. But these are the inks voted for by you. So this is a pretty, and with 165 people voting, we're getting a pretty good sampling across those social media networks as well. There seems to be a good range of, ages and nationalities and all kinds of things represented, so that's great. What did I take away from it? Well, there seems to be a good pull towards sort of more affordable and more available inks, and that goes without saying. If it's affordable, if it's available, people are going to buy it and use it and enjoy it. In that way, I was kind of surprised there weren't more Waterman inks sort of up on the list. Absolute Brown, the turquoise ink, Mystery Blue got a few, and of course Serenity Blue got a number of votes. I think that came in sort of around the 14 or 15 mark on the list. But without, I would think there'd be more Waterman on that list, but people are going for affordable inks. A lot of those really hard to get Bungu Box and Kobe inks and things like that didn't make the list. There were very few Sailor Studio inks, which sort of surprised me. But Diamine, Robert Oster, Pilot Iroshizuku, these all ranked really high because they're available and they're affordable. And also, they're great inks. They perform super well, so that's what people are after. So yeah, putting this list together, I found it really super interesting. I was so surprised that Sabimidori ranked so highly. It's a beautiful ink, don't get me wrong, but I was surprised it got that high. Also, Wearingeul Frankenstein was really high on the list, to where I would personally place it. So it's great that some of these ink brands are starting to get some really good traction. In fact, there were a lot of smaller ink brands, things like Ink Institute and things like that that were represented on this list, which is so great to see, because it's not just Pilot and Diamine that are the big players in the game. They are, sort of brands like that do represent a big portion of the market, obviously, but it's a lot of these smaller independent brands that are actually really important. And if you think of someone like Robert Oster, that's how that brand started as well. One guy making ink in his back shed in Australia suddenly has hundreds of inks on the market, and doing exclusives with all the biggest retailers and selling at pen shows and things like that. So it's a really great evolution of this industry, and it's something that I'm excited to see where it goes from here. And I hope that some of those ink trends sort of move through. I'm a big fan of really good performance sort of standard inks, so not like super high sheening or shimmering, things like that, but just really good performing inks that I can use without having to worry, and that clean easily and all that kind of stuff. So it's going to be interesting to see where ink goes, and maybe in a couple of years doing another one of these sorts of videos and see how the numbers change. So I hope you found this interesting, and as I said, these are the top inks as voted for by you. So these aren't my personal inks, these are your inks. 165 of you voted. So thank you so much for taking part and for taking the time to send me through your details. And a big thank you to my pen celebrities, as I call them, who I spoke to about this as well. It's always nice to know what the people who, whose videos we watch or who we buy from, what they really love as well. So please like and subscribe, hit the notifications button. All of that helps the algorithm and helps me to continue to grow my channel and make more content for you. If you've got a way you'd like to support the channel, I would really love to hear from you. It's your support that also makes this channel possible. So thank you for watching, and in the meantime, enjoy your inks, enjoy writing, and I'll talk to you soon.